So today we begin at the 16th verse of the 17th chapter, where we read, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. Last week, you recall that Paul and his missionary team, after having success in Berea with the Bereans, Jews from Thessalonica created a bit of a ruckus and forced them to leave. So they ended up in Athens. Athens. It was the center of the intellectual and power in the Mediterranean area prior to them being conquered and the rise of the Roman Empire. And what I've gleaned, see, if I had really planned this right, I'd have Dr. Nystrom speaking to you all this morning, but you'll have to tolerate me. Is that what I've gleaned from the theologians and other historians, at the time of Paul, Athens' day had passed. At the time of Paul, Athens' day had passed. Think of it, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Think of it of like Circus, the casino. Don't pretend, where's Calvin? Don't pretend like you don't know. I'm just saying what I'm saying. Circus, either in Reno or Las Vegas. I mean, it's a meme. It's a joke now. It's like, is it safe to go to Circus? When is the last time? When are they going to tear it down? Think of Athens kind of like Circus, with the clowns even. It was still there, but the Wynn, the MGM, the other casinos, you can name them, you know them, you've been there. The Venetian, other cities had passed them in terms of their significance and the import. But still, because it was Athens, because you could still get a steak for $29, and well, I won't say the kids would be safe, but you still have you have the entertainment there. It still held significance. Rome granted it kind of an independence, an autonomy, because of what it used to be, this intellectual capital. It used to be, and I've cautioned City Church about being irrelevant or becoming irrelevant to the conversations that are taking place all around us, and maybe taking place even at your own dinner table. As I was sharing with someone this past week, when it comes to our focus, our concern, this is an honest question. This is a very sincere question, not a rhetorical one, but do you weep over those things that causes God to weep? Do you? When you see those things, whatever they are, does it break your heart? Do you get upset? Do you get distressed? Do you get angry over those things that you see that Scripture lets us know that, again, the orphans and the widows, if you read the Old Testament, you'll know that it was the orphans and the widows that God castigated, that railed against his people because of their neglect in the pursuit of him. How dare you step past, on, or over, or avoid those? What you do to the least demonstrates your connection to me. So do you weep over those things? Or are we content, or content maybe is too strong a word, if we're not careful, do we catch ourselves navel gazing, turned in on ourselves again, and being okay with having the knowledge of how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? How will that move us along? We need to emulate the behavior of the Bereans. They studied the text. And when Paul came preaching, they compared and contrast what he was saying with the text, and seeing that there's this alignment. Oh, I get it. But they couldn't have done that if they weren't familiar with the text. That's why, again, I'm very serious in how appropriate 6 days before our leadership workshop. I am very serious about our pursuit and the necessity of leaders, at least at City Church. If you're a leader, you've got to be a part of a small group. You cannot just study, well, I read the Bible every morning. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. You need to be a part of a study group. And for those of us that are called into higher positions of leadership, you need to elevate that to a more rigorous form of study, be it Bible college or seminary. Your behavior has to align with what we all say we're called to do. We say we're called. All of us are called. It's just varying degrees. Well, does my behavior align with my calling? I wouldn't want to be lying flat on my back, getting ready to have open heart surgery. And I say, oh, doctor, where did you go to med school? Well, actually, I didn't go. But I saw it on Facebook last night. Stop. See, but we're probably more content with you can kill the body once, but what about the soul? And so we're okay with open heart spiritual surgery. And it's like, are you serious? But I saw it on Facebook last night. There are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. If we claim to be His, that's a bodacious claim. That's a bodacious claim. I'm a follower of our Lord Jesus Christ. Are you? Are you? Unfortunately, or fortunately for the purpose of the text today, the Athenians, they didn't know who they were, or that their time had passed. But we'll see that in a few minutes. But look at the text. Look at the text. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed. Paul was waiting days, weeks, months. He observed the condition of Circus and said, yuck. Yuck. And the word translated distress, that doesn't give the word the full weight of what it really meant. It was like, I am just upset. I am moved. I am grieved. This bothers me a whole lot. And the tense and the tense and the of the word was full, meant that it was full to the brim and running over of idolatry. Clowns everywhere. See, I read one account that they had, I believe it was Hermes, not that that's really important, but one of their philosophers or gods or whatever, that they had place on the portals of their home, their businesses, their civic places of engagement, gods, the heads of gods, kind of like folks do with flags. You know, it's just they got flags everywhere. Yeah, flag here on my truck, on the house, at the post office. Yeah, flag. You got gods. You got gods. You got gods everywhere. And Paul looks around and he's like, yuck. He became angry, greatly distressed. I asked earlier, I ask again. Do you get upset over the things that grieve God? Do you weep over the things that God weeps over? And the word lets us know about his distress, his anger, that it wasn't like I saw this and I got mad. It was like, man, I'm seeing this everywhere. Everywhere I go, this is in my face, and this is really bugging me. I won't go down the rabbit trail, but suffice it to say, every one of you and people I see in the grocery store, at the gas station, even on the freeway when they cut me off, are sheep. And I look at them, look at you all as God's creation. God has created us, has created you uniquely, specially for a task, an assignment. I don't know what it is. I only know what I know. I only know what I know for me. But he has created us. And so, again, do I weep over the things that God weeps over? Do I get angry over the things that grieve the Holy Spirit? Or do as I drive along the freeway, see an accident, I try my level best not to do it, and I'm pretty good at it, is don't slow down, gawk, and just, that's so sad. And then head off to my destination. Well, what was I supposed to do? I'm going to pull over and be an EMS? Nah, it's just an example. But you have plenty of opportunity. We have plenty of opportunity to pull over and minister to the situation. But how often do we do this? I know, I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. Verse 17. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. Okay, this is a great time for a shameless plug for our City Church blog site, acts1717.org. Again, if you just, all of those places that City Church is online in as I like to say, the marketplace of conversations, that's where we try to be. And the invitation stands to each and every one of you as God moves on your heart and you want to share something in the marketplace. Yeah, not necessarily a recipe for Sister Meeks's peach cobbler or Kim's hooch, Alabama hooch, but those conversations that are relevant to where people are right now. What if you were writing something? What would you say to those that have lost their homes in the fire in Southern California? Be warm and fed. I don't know. This is where we need to be. This is where we need to be. So in response to what he saw, Paul got to work. And he did what his team everywhere else had done. You see the text. He reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks. Okay, you've done that. As well as in the marketplace. He went to the place where life was happening, the town square, where things were being transacted. That's why I applaud and respect those that hold tight to our faith, but are in those spaces of obvious transaction, marketplace transaction. Everywhere we go, like I said, in the checkout line at Trader Joe's, that's an opportunity. But when you work at the state capitol, or you work at the DMV, or where you work, where you have folks coming at you 24/7, well, not the 8 hours that you're there. This is the marketplace of principals and vice principals. I was sharing with Deacon Josh, teacher, high school teacher. I said, your pulpit, I mean this sincerely, your pulpit is much bigger than City Church could ever be. So what are you going to do about it? Again, if we're not careful, we'll pursue the wrong thing and miss the thing that God is like, no, I want you right here doing this in this marketplace. But if we look at the marketplaces, look, I'm here and I'm guilty of this. Trust me, I'm guilty of this. Sister Meeks, when we'd meet someone we didn't know, invariably, Sister Meeks would leak out, oh, well, we worship at this church, and my husband happens to be the pastor. It's like, oh, God, honey, I just want to be. I'm just trying to get popcorn right now. I'm not. But I'm a sinner, redeemed, and I've come around. It's like, and invariably, oh man, kind of been looking for a place to call home. What can you? The marketplace. I'm hearing Michael McDonald, and just taking it to the streets. You want to be where things are going down. That's where we need to be. We don't. Again, whatever God leads us to do, we'll do. I'm not even necessarily, even though Aaron does a intentionally missional food distribution to the unhoused. I'm not even saying, we're going to stand on the corner and pass out tracts. There's nothing wrong with that. There's everything right with it. But but wherever God takes you, that's where you need to be. But God hasn't told me to do that. Have you asked? And if you ask, are you in a position to listen? Or are you flooded with the noise of life and, God, I'm waiting to hear from you. Yeah. How will they know him if they don't know us? How will they know him if they don't know us? Is our expectation that God will audibly speak to those that don't know him? Well, I'm not an evangelist. Yes, you are. As I shared, he probably didn't say it, but as they say, St. Francis of Assisi said, at all times preach the gospel. If necessary, use words. But I'm trying to hide. And Sister Meeks is more bolder and more intentional. It's like, she's the man. No, I'm just kidding. I hear you. Well, Paul, that was his jam. He didn't have kids that we know of, and he didn't have a house, and he made tents. It's like, so you're really going to pull yourself down then. You're going to hold yourself up and say, well, Paul is doing all this, I'm not, so that gives you an out? If anything, that ought to come with condemnation. I'm not saying do that. Hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying do that, but I am saying as we live the life God has given us, we need to live it with intentionality. Not a passive Christian, As things come to me, I'll catch the ball. But what are you doing to take it to the streets? Thank you, Michael McDonald. So what did Paul do? What was his response? I'm almost done. Verse 18. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" Others remarked, "He seems to be advocating foreign gods." They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Isn't it something how, again, all I'm trying to do is live a life worthy of my calling. And folks are going to call you, it was a derogatory term. They call him babbler. It was, as one theologian, others, but one in particular posited, it was a derogatory term referencing a bird that scavenges or picks for seed. Oh, you're a babbler. You're taking one philosophy and adding it to another philosophy, and then you're conjuring up some kind of theological stew. As I was thinking about that, it's like that's kind of what folks do. That's what folks do. I mean, and if you're not careful, you might be one of those folk. It's like I'll take some of what the text says, some, not all, some, and then I'll take what I think is culturally correct, and then I'll take what Mama said, and I'll mix that up in a stew, and that becomes my lived out theology. Tell me I'm wrong. That's what we do. That's exactly what we do. Well, my mama told me, and was your Sunday school teacher any good? I don't know. This is what I learned. That's why I say, read the text. Go to Bible study. Go to small group. And those of us that have been called to a higher calling, you have to make that higher step. As Sister Meeks would say, you got to jump high. If you're going to jump high. Epicureans, religious skeptics. They reject immortality. They're known for their pursuit of happiness and contentment and detached from social competition. They assent to deity. They assent to God, but God really doesn't have any. It's like, see, religion gets in the way of that perfect life. If you see yourself in any of these descriptions, you can raise your hand or raise your heart. I don't know. That's Epicureans. Epicureans were critical of religion, thinking that there's a God that inserts himself in the affairs of men. Stoics believe that the human race was one. God is in everything, and everything is God. Pantheists. It's just God. It's in the tree. That's God. This microphone. That's God. Stoics. As life is lived, it's like, don't get too high, don't get too low. Just be in harmony with things. Isn't it interesting that, more than 2 millennia later, ain't a whole lot changed? That there's a whole lot, if you just take those two 30,000-foot level views of philosophy and look at that, and it's like, oh man, that's my neighbor. That's a little bit of me. Maybe I'm Stoic. Maybe I'm Epicurean. And then along comes Paul, a babbler. And he has the audacity. Read the text. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. You don't have to worry about standing out in the crowd. You will stand out. You're going to stand out. You will stand out. And again, I'm not talking about the Thompson Chain Bible and the big gold cross and all of the adornments that we try and wear. And I got a couple of them, but trust me, I wear them strategically and with humility. Redeemed. Want to go to heaven? Just ask. No, I don't have that, but I've seen that. God bless us. I mean, I don't know. What do we? What we must be drinking Kim's stuff. I'm serious. It's like I don't get me. I don't get us. Let me ask a question as I'm wrapping up. This is a question to ask yourself. Don't raise your hand. If someone said, Mark, what must I do to be saved? Do you know how to respond? Well, let me call the pastor, and I'll put him in touch with you. Call Deacon. I'll put him in touch with. Do we know what to do when eternity is on the line? Would we know what to say at that point? If not, help is on the way. We're going to be having. We've done this several times in the arc of 13 years. We're going to do it again in the coming weeks. So stay tuned. Listen for the announcements from either Reverend Stephanie or the e-news or the e-bulletin. But we will be having how to live and communicate the gospel to folks that are looking. I get how they responded because they're ignorant of they hadn't heard it. Obviously, the gospel. You're coming up. You're advocating foreign gods. You're doing whatever. And so, what do? They didn't beat them up and take them, but they led them, or hey, you need to go to the Areopagus. This rock outcrop where things civic and things like this are judged out. Discovered that this was in it is believed their mythology posits that this is where one of the gods who murdered another god was tried, and so the name sort of kind of translates to Areopagus. So this is the judgment seat for the Greeks. We'll dive into their response, next week. But they brought them there because if you're going to introduce another god, he has to be vetted. Bring the god in. May we know what this new teaching is that you're presenting. You're bringing some strange ideas to our ears. We would like to know what they mean. And I'm closing, I love Luke's little parenthetical. It was just like, these guys are eggheads. That's my translation. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. That was a condemnation. That wasn't a compliment. It's like these guys, that's all. It's like, what are you doing? Do you want to know for transformation, or do you want to know just because that's one more bit of information you can put in your intellectual quiver? So I'll ask ourselves again, do I want to know him in that way? Do I really want to know him? As it was, it was shared earlier. I called it If we're not careful, our response to God can be as if we're asking for room service. But it was Deacon Nate and Deacon Angela that said they were listening to a message, and they said, if we're not careful, our relationship God can be like a tenant to a landlord. A tenant to a landlord. Not much of a relationship, but when my house needs repair, I call my landlord. Plumbing's leaking, ring up the landlord. This needs fixing, call up the landlord. But if I'm in relationship with him, I'm building a house not made with hands. And I am also, if anything needs repairing, I've got a tool belt and tools strapped on, and I'm ready to do the work. But that's a perspective that isn't shared largely with confessing folks. Do I really want to know him? Do I want to know him that way? Not knowing doesn't relieve us of any obligation. But knowing, then you can sure enough say, is like, I don't have any excuse. But again, ignorance of the law is no excuse.